Ever get that feeling? You're in like a really important situation, right? Giving a big presentation or trying to remember some crucial piece of information, and suddenly your mind just goes completely blank.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly what you
It's
mean.
like everything you knew just
Yeah,
vanishes. Happens to all of us, right?
absolutely. It's so frustrating. You know you have the skills and the knowledge, but then when the pressure's on, it's like you just can't access it.
That's like trying to grab smoke or something.
Exactly.
So in this deep dive, we're going to try to figure out why this choking under pressure
Mm,
happens to us.
yeah.
And even more importantly, give you some strategies to stay calm and confident and focused when it really counts.
Sounds
It
good.
reminds me of something you mentioned in your notes, the analogy of a young bird learning to fly.
Right.
It practices and practices, but then that first leap, the fear takes over. And for a second, it forgets how to flap its wings.
Such a good analogy. You've done all this groundwork, but then in that crucial moment, things fall apart.
We always hear that saying, pressure makes diamonds, right?
Right.
Suggests that challenges can bring out our best, but we also know that too much pressure can cause us to stumble. It's like counterintuitive, right? You think if you prepare really hard, you'd be guaranteed to perform at your peak. But then this whole choking under pressure thing proves that's not always how it works.
It's interesting because I think a lot of times we think that when we falter under pressure, it's because we just don't have the ability. But what if it's actually the opposite?
Hmm.
What if it's because we care too much about the outcome?
I see. So maybe it's not about a lack of skill, but more about overthinking the whole situation, focusing so much on the potential result that we forget to focus on the process. And that's where those feelings of self-doubt and anxiety come in, right?
Exactly. And that can really derail your
Right.
performance.
This isn't just some new modern thing, is it? I mean, looking back through history and across different cultures, people have always struggled with pressure.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It seems to be a fundamental part of the human experience.
So whether it was a performer in ancient times facing a tough audience or somebody today navigating a stressful job interview, that core psychological response to pressure seems to be pretty consistent across time.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's dive into some tangible steps people can take. When you feel that pressure starting to build, what's like the first thing you can do?
I think one of the most important starting points is acceptance and self-compassion.
Okay.
You know, just acknowledging that it's totally normal to feel nervous in high pressure situations. It's a human response.
Right.
And being kind to yourself in those moments can actually help to reduce that anxiety. We have to remember that perfection is often unrealistic,
It is.
and making mistakes is just a part of learning and growing.
It's true. There's this constant pressure in society to always be performing at your best,
Mm,
to always be on top. And I feel like that just adds another layer of pressure.
absolutely. That expectation to be perfect all the time is just so debilitating.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
it's so much better to shift your focus to your own personal growth,
Mm.
and value the effort that you're putting in rather than just fixating on some external measure of success.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And it's not just some abstract idea. I mean, we have real world examples of people at the very top of their game struggling with this.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You talked about Dan O'Brien, the decathlete, in your notes.
Yes. Dan O'Brien. He was considered a favorite to win gold at the 1992 Olympics. He was so talented, incredible across all 10 events.
Wow.
But at the U.S. Olympic trials that year, he came up against a hurdle that on paper seemed totally manageable. It was clearing a certain height in the pole vault, which he had done countless times before.
But I guess the pressure of the situation got to him.
Yeah, he failed on his first attempt and then his second as well.
Oh, no.
And on that third try, with the weight of the Olympics and everyone's expectations on him, he couldn't clear the height. He didn't even end up qualifying for the Olympic team that year. It's crazy, right? And he later said something that I think a lot of people can relate to. He said, I was thinking too much about everything instead of just doing what I knew how to do. I got stuck in my head.
That's so powerful. It really highlights how even someone at the peak of their athletic ability, with years of training, can still be affected by the pressure of the moment.
Yeah, and what's also really important about his story is what happened next. He didn't let that setback define him. He learned from that experience, he worked on managing his stress and pressure, and then at the 1996 Olympics, he went on to win the gold medal.
That's amazing. So it really is possible to learn from these experiences.
It is.
And it's not just Olympic athletes, right? I mean, we see these kinds of things happening in so many different areas of life.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like someone giving a presentation at work and they just can't remember the information.
Sure.
Or a musician messing up during a performance.
Uh,
Or even someone in a job interview who freezes up when they're asked a question that they totally know the answer to.
absolutely.
And like we said, there's no single cause or solution.
Right.
We were talking earlier about pressure makes diamonds.
Yeah.
How do you view that idea now?
Well, I think there's some truth to it. Facing challenges can help you grow and become more resilient, but too much pressure can be a bad thing.
Right. It's about finding that balance.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe the goal isn't to eliminate pressure completely
Mm-hmm.
because a certain amount can be motivating,
Mm-hmm.
but to learn how to manage it effectively.
I think so. And I think one really helpful step is to reflect on your own experiences. Think about times when you felt like you underperformed because of pressure. What was happening? What were you thinking?
Right.
And talking about those experiences with other people can be really helpful too. It can make you feel less alone, and you can get support from others.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's move on to some more practical techniques. Are there things that we can actively do to build up our resistance to pressure in the moment?
Oh, yeah, for sure. One way to think about it is like an artist. You have an artist who's used to working alone in their studio, but then they decide to start practicing out in a busy park. At first, all the noise and people watching them might be distracting and make them nervous.
Yeah.
But over time, those external things become less of a big deal. They adapt. So in the same way, if we intentionally expose ourselves to slightly stressful situations during practice, we can get used to that feeling of pressure, and it won't feel so overwhelming when we're in a high-stakes situation.
I like that. It's like building up a tolerance.
Exactly.
So if you get anxious speaking in front of people, maybe you could practice your presentation with some friends first,
Yeah,
or in a less formal setting.
exactly. It's all about creating those smaller pressure scenarios to help you gain confidence.
I got it.
Another really powerful technique is to focus on the present moment.
How does that help? Because when you're under pressure, it's so easy to get caught up in what might happen in the future, the what ifs.
And that's what feeds the anxiety.
Right.
But if you can bring your attention back to the here and now, to what's actually happening right now, you can stay more grounded and focused on the task at hand. It's like a tightrope walker. They're not thinking about falling. They're completely focused on putting one foot in front of the other. If you can immerse yourself in the present task, you can let go of some of those future fears.
It's like being in a flow state where you're so engaged in what you're doing that all the distractions and worries fade away.
It is very similar to that. And then there's that voice inside our heads.
Oh, yeah?
Sometimes, especially when we're feeling the pressure, that inner voice can get really critical and unhelpful.
The inner critic.
Yes.
The one that tells
Well-
you you're going to fail or that you're not good enough.
Exactly. And that negative self-talk can really amplify the pressure. But
Yeah.
what's really empowering is that you can actually change that inner dialogue.
You can.
You can. You can choose to replace those negative thoughts with more positive and encouraging self-statements.
Oh, okay.
So instead of thinking, what if I fail? You can tell yourself, I've prepared for this and I can handle this challenge.
So it's about actively reframing those messages.
Exactly. You want to be your own cheerleader, not your own worst enemy.
I like that.
Mm.
And are there things we can do on a physical level to help calm our bodies down when we're feeling the pressure?
Oh, absolutely. One of the best things you can do is deep breathing.
Yeah, I've heard that before. What makes it so effective?
Well, when you take slow, deep breaths, it actually has a calming effect on your nervous system. It's like hitting a reset button for your body's stress response. When you feel that tension building, your heart starts racing, your breathing gets shallow. Just taking a few deep breaths can really help to ease that stress and bring back some mental clarity.
So it's a quick and easy tool that we could use in pretty much any situation.
Pretty much, yeah. And another great mental technique is visualization.
Visualization.
Yeah, like picturing yourself succeeding.
Oh, like athletes who mentally rehearse crossing the finish line before the race even starts.
Exactly. A lot of high performers in all sorts of fields use this technique. Yeah, so a musician might visualize playing a difficult piece perfectly. Or a public speaker might imagine giving a really engaging presentation. Or a student might picture themselves acing an exam. By creating these positive mental images, you're basically building belief in yourself and preparing yourself for success.
It's almost like tricking your brain into thinking it's already happened.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Our minds don't always fully distinguish between what we imagine and what we actually experience.
So those positive visualizations can be a powerful way to boost your confidence and reduce anxiety.
Exactly. And I think it's important to remember that everyone experiences pressure. Even people who seem like they handle it really well, like Dan O'Brien after his setback.
Right.
The key is how we learn to respond to it.
So to recap what we've talked about today, we've discussed the importance of accepting that nervousness is normal in high-pressure situations.
Right.
the importance of being kind to yourself,
Yes.
and what we can learn from experiences like Dan O'Brien's. We've also explored some practical strategies, like practicing in slightly stressful environments, focusing on the present moment, managing your inner critic, and using tools like deep breathing and visualization.
Yep, it's a multifaceted approach.
And it all goes back to that analogy of the young bird. It was scared at first and forgot how to flap its wings, but it didn't stay on the ground.
Right.
It kept trying, and eventually it soared.
That's a great way to put it. You have to overcome that initial fear, keep practicing these strategies, and trust in your abilities.
So to our listeners out there, think about a recent situation where you felt that pressure building.
Yeah.
Which of the strategies we've talked about today do you think would be most helpful for you to find your wings the next time you face a similar challenge?
What's one thing you can commit to trying next time you're in that situation?
And as we wrap up today's deep dive, let's revisit some of the key terms and phrases we've explored. The idea of a bird flapping its wings, taking a deep breath, being gripped by fear, the feeling of choking under pressure, the saying pressure makes diamonds, but also that it can cause us to stumble. The impact of doubt, getting stuck in your head, the tendency to freeze under pressure, the fact that it's okay to feel nervous, but trying to stay grounded even when the tension is rising by taking a few deep breaths and visualizing success so we could overcome those moments of intense pressure.
Those are all great things to keep in mind.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and helpful.
We hope you can apply these strategies to your own life. Thanks for listening. See you next time.